everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Track to Noise podcast. Thank you again so much for joining us, everyone. On today's show, despite this weekend's result, it's a bit of a special episode here actually at Track to Noise, as we are now midway through the season with January transfer window kind of coming to an end. I thought it'd be time to do a bit of a mid-season squad review. So on today's show, we're sort of like ranking each player as the season goes on. We'll do a little bit of a recap of the game against Preston on Saturday as well. And to help me do that, it's a bit of a special guest on today's show. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by, from his self-titled YouTube channel and other social platforms, Mr. Harvey Bell. Harvey, thank you for joining Noise this week.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to coming on.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've sort of seen you around on the YouTube sphere of your sort of Ipswich Town news. It's all really good stuff, especially at the moment with all the transfer news. It's coming in thick and fast, isn't it? But yeah, just sort of as a Town fan, just like what's your journey from sort of creating your channel and also just favourite Town memories over the years? I'm sure there's plenty to choose from, especially in recent times anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been going down to Portman Road for probably about 15 years now. I'm 21, so most of my life has been spent at Portman Road. My granddad is a big Ipswich Town fan, and he started taking us down with my dad and my brother, and I've sort of followed the club all my life. Yeah, and then I started a YouTube channel just to sort of document it all during COVID. I've never really been one for vlogging, but I've always sort of given my opinion and come on. The YouTube channel grew a little bit. It's certainly not massive yet, but I also have stuff with BBC Radio Suffolk as well. So I attend some of the press conferences, things like that. And then, in the last sort of year or so, I've been very fortunate that a few more people have decided that they like to hear what I have to say about Ipswich Town, which is surprising, but very welcome.
It's a testament to your work, mate. I think I enjoyed, as a viewer of yours, I enjoyed on TikTok this past Christmas, your advent calendar as well. Some proper throwback names there. What was the inspiration for that? Just festive spirit, I guess, and all that?
Yeah, very much so. It's just sort of, I thought, what could we do around Christmas time just to do something a bit Christmassy? And I quite enjoyed just going through that, one different player every day. I'm not sure if people necessarily picked up on the fact that the day of the month was also the shirt number that player wore. So, like, number 15 was Massimo Luongo from his first loan spell. But that never seemed to come across too much. But it was lots of fun sort of picking out some of the random players. I think we had Drissa Diallo on there, Pablo Cunyago on there, some quite obscure players. I'm trying to think, Luciano Savelli made an appearance, and that's quite an obscure name. So there were some well-known players on there, but it was also quite good to go down memory lane and pick out some really random players as well.
Absolutely. But obviously, as you said, memory lane has been some good ones in recent years, but just today's show is very much obviously looking at the present and the season and stuff. Before we get into looking back in this past weekend's game, how would you have rated our season so far? I mean, it seems a bit up and down, despite we are very much in the automatic race and deep in the playoffs by the looks of things. But it seems a bit up and down from most fans' perspective. Where are you at with this season? How it's gone so far?
Yeah, it's very up and down, but it's also weird as well, because if you look at the euphoria of a couple of years ago of us in second place chasing, obviously, promotion after just being promoted from League One, it was so exciting and there was so much buzz around us. And we're not in a dissimilar position now. We're entering the last sort of 15, 20 games of the season, and we are again in that chasing pack for automatic promotion. And it's quite surprising that there isn't that joy around it. And I think probably the reason for that is just the fact that, there's so many new players and we almost ripped apart the core of our squad in the summer. So it's a really unique season. It still ranks as one of the best Ipswich Town seasons that I've followed, just on the basis of where we are in the championship table and the quality of our team. But in terms of like the euphoria around it's a bit odd, because I don't think there's ever been a season like this where we're doing so well, but also there's so much more from this team to come. And it's really strange like that, because you watch the games and you know that there's so much more to come from this team. Yet you take two steps forward, and it seems like, especially with games like yesterday, we take one step back. So I think it's been a season where we've been very much our own worst enemy at times, but hopefully we can sort of get over that across these last few games of the season and, really mount a serious push to hopefully win the league, because I don't think that's out of contention. And I think, we could all look back in a few months and sit here and be like, well, do you know what? That took a little while to get going, but we ended up winning the league. And that's the weird thing about it is we've been very good in parts. And when we click, we probably are the best team in the division, but it's just finding that consistency, I think.
Do you think also, I think this year, especially in comparisons with maybe League One, you could argue there's this element to it as well. I don't think so in the Championship season, we got promoted a couple of seasons ago. There's an element of expectation this year, isn't there? which we haven't really had
massively.
under our shoulders, which I think can overshadow the quality of football we're playing and the results we're getting. Do you think?
Yeah, no, without a doubt, I think that is a really hard burden that the team have got to carry, and rightly so. They should carry it because a lot of these players have come on massive transfer fees, and there is an expectation that they should live up to that. Especially probably more on the boys that were here in the Premier League last season. I'm looking at players like Jack Clark, Jaden Philogene, Jacob Greaves, Dara O'Shea. Those players that don't have almost the excuse of having come in the summer and had to adapt to things. Those are the players that I'm looking at wanting to deliver week in, week out, because yes, there's the expectation to go back up, but the other players are sort of excused by the fact that they did have a lot of transition in the summer. So it's hard as well, when you play teams that come to Portman Road, they throw players behind the ball, you have to try and break them down, and we don't seem to have necessarily found the answers to that yet. I mean, at home, we've been particularly good. We seem to find a way most of the time, but on the road, as soon as we come up against a team that is a bit more physical than us, a team that doesn't let us play the way that we want to play, that's really difficult. And I don't know, I mean, comparison is the thief of joy, isn't it? But when you look at the team of 2 years ago, I feel like if we were drawing a game or needed a goal in the last 10 minutes, we were throwing hammer and tong at it to get it. And it's not for a lack of effort, I don't think, that in similar positions this season, we don't seem to do that. But that's exactly it. We don't seem to do that. We don't seem to have players flying down the wing, throwing themselves at balls to try and find that killer goal. And I don't know whether that expectation has turned into a little bit of expectation that they think that they're just going to walk teams, or think that that goal is just going to come just by the divine right of it having to come. But it's just the fact that I think it's like anything. When you have a target on your back because you've spent so much, it's going to make things more difficult.
Absolutely. I think as well, yesterday's game, we'll get into the Preston match now, actually. As you said, in that last stage of the game, I was just harkening back to so many previous games a few seasons ago when, as you said, there were so many sort of late goals and late moments, and you sort of knew at least one of them was going to pull up from a bit of his, just that there's that lack of expectation to think that goal is going to come, really, isn't there?
Yeah.
Obviously, we won't have a massive in-depth analysis of this game, but just some takeaways from it. I mean, before we start recording today, me and you both said how, a 9, despite the fact McKenna seemed to say we may not be getting another striker before the deadline comes through. Obviously, at time recording, we don't know what's going to happen by the time this goes out. But, we had Azon come off at half-time, who had a decent spell. Obviously, he's lacked goals this season, as most 9s have. And George Hurst been given the opportunity this season. It's not really coming through. And obviously, I don't think Akpom, unfortunately, can be relied upon as that main starter as well. It's a tricky spot, isn't it? At number 9, no one really proved they can grasp it by the scruff of the neck, can they?
No, and I think the frustrating thing about that is the three of them can all probably stake a claim to the fact that they could be the starting number 9, in the sense that Hurst scored a number of goals in the Premier League last year. Scotland international, has been good for Ipswich for a couple of years. Akpom having scored so many goals for Middlesbrough when he was there, and then Azon having been as prolific as he was in Italy. They're all good strikers and have been good strikers, but this season it just hasn't clicked for whatever reason. And Hurst is the one that I'm particularly frustrated about, and I really want him to do well. I've got nothing but love for George Hurst for what he's given to Ipswich Town, and it's clearly a confidence issue with him rather than quality at the moment, because we've seen the quality in abundance over the last couple of years, and it's hard because it's a snowball effect. When you lose a bit of confidence, there comes a point where maybe he doesn't throw himself at the ball as much as he wants to, because maybe he doesn't want to get there in fear of missing. And it's just things like that where he's just so short of confidence at the minute. And there was that chance in the Preston game, where he lifted the ball over the goalkeeper and it got cleared off the line. And I was desperate for that to go in, not just for the fact that it would have, I think, equalised at the time, but it would have given George Hurst such a big boost of confidence that he clearly needs, because there is definitely a prolific number 9 in there. And it's like the same with Azon. We're seeing glimpses, haven't we, that his hold-up play is definitely improving. There's no lack of effort from Azon. I don't think anybody can question the fact that he works very hard. It's just, he's taken a little while to adapt, hasn't he? And I don't know what it is with Akpom. I don't know why Akpom hasn't kicked on this season. You see it quite often that a player just goes to a club and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. And I can't pinpoint why it hasn't worked out for Akpom. The only thing that I would perhaps say is that when we signed him in the summer, I had in my head that he was very much going to be a number 9, but he's played in that number 10 position a fair bit. And I don't think that's necessarily where he's best suited. There's a lot of talk about him being a good second striker. I don't think a second striker is necessarily the number 10 position. I think there is a differentiation between those two roles, and we don't really play in a system that suits Akpom. We don't play with two up front. So I'd be interested to see what he would do with two strikers up front, but obviously that's not a way that we're going to play. We've never played with two up front under Kieran McKenna, and you can't change the system for one player. But it's a shame because he is obviously a very good player at this level, but just not for Ipswich at the moment.
Yeah, and obviously getting into the game as well, that we did see, like, I think, as you said, a few players not taking chances and stuff, which obviously is a big factor into not taking the lead or equalising, as you said. And if this may be sort of devil's advocate and just clutching at straws and some excuses, thoughts on the referee performance yesterday? I mean, I know it's usually not something like to sort of take much credence to because it just can be seen as an excuse, which maybe this is. But I think McKenna obviously said there's a couple of penalty shouts. Obviously, Clark at the end of a potential handball shout as well there. And just a few other decisions throughout the game which I thought were going against us in comparison to Preston. Just thoughts on that, or do you not hold much credence to referees impacting the game as much as some people do?
Usually I'm very much like, oh no, we have to be better. And as much as I still believe that about yesterday, and the referee didn't miss big chances for us that we had, it was a really weird refereeing performance. In the first half, he just seemed to give everything Preston's way. And then the second half, probably similar. And then bizarrely, he gave us that penalty, which I have to say, I mean, I sit in the West Stand. I had a pretty good view of it. I've not seen it back on replay yet, so I may look very silly in saying this. There was probably some contact on Jack Clark, but Jack Clark went down like ages after the contact, and the referee pointed to the spot. And I said to the guy who sits in front of me, I said, look, that's not a penalty. Obviously, I was going to take it because I'm an Ipswich Town fan. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to shout for it. Of course, I was happy that we got it and scored it. But then the opposite to that is Jack Clark then gets bundled over the ball with like 2 minutes of stoppage time to go. Clear shove in the back.
Way clearer, yeah.
And just nothing. And it's like, well, you've given that, and then you've not given that. Where's the consistency? And I have to actually say, I think the standard of refereeing this season has been better in the Championship than it has been in the last few times we've been in the Championship. Because, I mean, there has been far fewer games that I've come away from Portman Road thinking to myself, oh, the referees had an absolute stinker there. But yesterday, I definitely did. I thought, the performance was not great. And I like to think that the referee will look back on those decisions and realise that. But it certainly wasn't a good game from the ref at all.
No, absolutely. But as you said, I think it's like not taking chances as well, isn't it? Because there were moments in that, especially with the stoppage time, that sort of late header and sort of goal mouth action as well. Like, I think we've seen in games like this as well. This game reminded me so much of those games we had against Watford and Wrexham and Derby as well at home, which I thought we kind of put in the rear view mirror. But these performances are quite worrying as well, because home's become a bit of a fortress and really good performances recently. Obviously, Coventry and a few others to name a few. With a lot of away games coming up, the home form you kind of hoped ahead of all those games coming up, this game was going to hopefully be a victory, but unfortunately it wasn't. It does put us a bit of a sticky situation now, doesn't it, with all these away games coming?
Away from home this season has clearly been a struggle. The bulk of our points have come at home, and that's the reason we're as high up as we are, because I think we've been a little bit bullied away from home this season on occasions, particularly overrunning midfield, and that's not to knock Azor Matasiwa, who's been brilliant for the most part of the season, but there is clearly a physicality issue in midfield when we play away from home, and I think that's something that hopefully Dan Neil can help us out with. He's clearly a player that has a lot of muscle to him, loves a tackle. So I'm hoping he'll be massive in February as we try to sort of build our away form a little bit. And look, I think it's just that thing, isn't it? I mean, when we travel away from home, we need players that can step up because they don't necessarily have the fans behind them as much as they would at home. So we need those leaders on the pitch. We need Dara O'Shea. We need Daniel. We need Azor Matasiwa. We need those players to grab those games by the scruff of the neck. And I think particularly when you look at the game against Sheffield United last week, it was players like Callum O'Hare and Gustavo Hamer that took that game by the scruff of its neck and won it for Sheffield United. And that just hasn't happened for us on the road so far this season, as much as I hope that it does and that it will. I just think that Dan Neil is hopefully going to be the key to us being better away from home. But you can't pin it on one player. There's clearly issues away from home that hopefully McKenna can address, and we'll be better when we go to. I think it is Derby next, isn't it? And then, as you say, Watford and all these other ones that unfortunately are going to be quite difficult tests. Vicarage Road is not an easy place to go. Pride Park is not an easy place to go. The racecourse, with the form that Wrexham are in at the moment, it's not just 5 away games, it's 5 away games against teams that are actually quite good and, certainly good at home. So that's going to be a particularly difficult February. The flip side to that is that if we come through it unscathed and look really good, then, we're going to be in a really good position come the start of March, and we'll have lots of home games then where we'd go into as favourites. So, it's going to be a really big test, but one that if we come out the right side of, we'll be in a really healthy position.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes going into runs like this, we've been a bit fearful of this season. I think after the Blackburn draw December last year, we had like sort of Coventry and Stoke and some decent sides, Millwall as well, to name a few. And then it was a really good run in December, wasn't it? So I know a lot of openers were at home, but it's hard to predict, isn't it? But hopefully, as you said, I think the Dan Neil edition, it's a great point about that midfield presence can be a key one on the road, especially. But just before we go to, as I said, on today's show, we're sort of rating the squad throughout the season. But just bit of a looking at everyone else around us. I mean, it was a bit of an up and down result. Borough won again. They need to be flying after, obviously, Edwards left there in the season, sort of found their form again. Whole City are above us somehow. I think considering how our performance when we played them overseas, I'm quite surprised by. But there you go. Maybe it's more of us than them. And Coventry, just that lead is gone, and I hope it may still continue. I was saying to our podcast chat and for the Tracktones podcast WhatsApp group, saying I'm more looking at Coventry to slip up than Borough now. But 7 points behind, game in hand. It's still a long way to go. You'd like to still be in third, maybe second, but just thoughts on how the table's looking.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Because I think like a couple of months ago, Coventry looked destined to go up and they looked like it was almost done. And that lead, as you say, is just, it's gone. And the annoying thing is that had we have beaten Sheffield United and had we have beaten Preston, then we could have gone joint top with a win at Portsmouth on Tuesday. So that's the frustrating thing. But it does demonstrate at least that the league can change around so quickly. I know it's a bit of a cliche to say that the Championship can turn around, but I certainly think the top 5, I believe it's us, Hull, Millwall, Coventry and Middlesbrough. And I think those are the 5 that are in contention for automatic promotion. I don't really see anybody else climbing into the top 2
Wrexham
or fighting for the top 2.
Again.
Sorry, say it again?
Wrexham doing it again, perhaps.
Oh yeah, I think they're a very good shout for the playoffs. To be honest, I think they're but that top 5, I think it is slowly establishing itself as the race for automatic promotion. And I mean, Hull, I haven't been overly taken by from what I've seen of them, but they're clearly up there. With a lot of thanks to Ollie McBurney and the goals that he scored. Joe Geldhart chipping in with a few as well. Coventry are obviously up there because of the amazing start of the season that they've had. Middlesbrough are, for me, the ones that are going to stick up there because of Kim Hellberg. He's, come to the Riverside and he's taken to it like a duck to water. They had the whole saga with Rob Edwards at the start of the season and people thought that might be their downfall, but it's proved to be really good for them. And I genuinely think that Hellberg's done a terrific job there. So I think Middlesbrough will finish in the top 2. I don't know if they'll win the league, but I think if Town can find a bit of consistency, then there's no reason why we don't climb above Hull and climb above Coventry and get into the top 2 or even win the league. I'm very confident in that even though those sides have been up there for a long time this season, I do think we are probably better on our day. It's just if we can find our day a bit more often.
It's also as well, you look at those teams, those 4 other teams around us that you've mentioned, the 5 that you think could be the automatics. We've done the double over Cov, and obviously we've played it away, but you've Borough, Hull and Mill all still to come to Portman Road as well, which I think could be really key as the season rolls on. But we'll get into that's sort of our look back on the game there. It's not the result we wanted, but as I said, some teams messing up on top of us did kind of help and sort of soften the edges a bit this week. And I should say as well, actually, shout out to Robin from Norway, one of our followers. He went to Portman Road on the weekend, messaged us a few weeks beforehand saying any good pubs to recommend. I actually live in Yorkshire, so maybe the landscape of town's changed slightly. So apologies if you didn't find the ones I recommended. And unfortunately, didn't see Egley, a countryman, score a goal. But good to see some Tracktones faithful at Portman Road on the weekend. As I said at the top of the show, Harvey and everyone listening, we're going to sort of do squad ratings now throughout the season. I sort of based the parameter on this of players who sort of contributed a bit. Like, I'm not going to include, no offense to your David Buttons or Welcome Baggots in there, who haven't
No, fair
contributed
enough.
so much, but we'll sort of do it from the A plus to B sort of grading system. However it works these days, it's changed since I was in school, but that's sort of how I did it back in my day. We'll sort of look at that before we start to look at players who've contributed massively this season, with it being January as well. We can get into signings first. Actually, it hasn't been many players coming through the door, but I think the two that have come through look to be really good quality players. We'll start with Anis Mehmeti. Obviously, he did make his first start on the weekend against Preston, and maybe it could be the fact that he's a new toy, so you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. He looks really good. But I thought, with the absence number 10, and we are missing Nunes a bit, some good passes in there that unfortunately won't put away. But he looks like a good quality player and sort of play all over the place, doesn't he?
Yeah, I noticed that he dropped deep a fair bit, actually. And there was that particular moment where he played Jack Clark through in the first half, and Clark just couldn't sort his feet out, unfortunately. But there are definitely some positive bits from him. He was neat and tidy. He cut in and had a shot on goal just before getting taken off for Chuba Akpom. And he's clearly somebody that we've brought in with the view of letting Sammy Szmodics go, because Szmodics wasn't even on the bench yesterday, and McKenna's obviously said about Sammy Szmodics departing. So it's a very necessary signing. And he's a very different player to Szmodics, so it's clear to see the direction that the club are going with that number 10 position, because Nunes is quite tricky with his feet, a bit more expansive with his passing, and I think Mehmeti is of a similar breadth to that. And he's added a few goals in for Bristol City this season, so if he can find some goal scoring form for us in this second half of the season, there's no reason that he can. There's no reason why he can't be a really big addition for us.
So, yeah, obviously, as you said, Dan Neil came through the door, as you said, you spoke about him earlier in the show there, but how key can he be to Town this season? Obviously, that centre of the midfield next to Matty was kind of an open spot, really, for the most part, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it has been. And he could be massive for Ipswich, I think, because Taylor and Kajus have shared that position. And whilst Taylor had a really good run in the team from October, probably through November, I don't think either of them in recent weeks have necessarily done amazing in that position. They've both been neat and tidy. They've both kept things ticking over. But there hasn't been anybody in that midfield next to Azor that has come in and made me think, wow, they need to stay in that team. I mean, Kajus is good in flashes. He's got that turn that he does on the halfway line, a bit more skill, but I need to see more end product for him. And look, I think Dan Neil is everything that we need in that midfield. From what I've seen of him at Sunderland and from what Sunderland fans say about him, there's no reason why he can't come into the team and just take that place, because he's the captain at Championship level. He captained Sunderland to promotion. I've spoken a lot about leadership in the sense that we need leaders on the pitch. He's going to bring us that. I watched his highlights reel. I know you can't say sort of too much about these highlight reels because it only shows the good stuff, but there's a lot of similar movements to that of Hayden Hackney, who we obviously chased a lot in the summer and has done so well for Middlesbrough. So if Dan Neil can click for us the way that he clicked for Sunderland next to Luke O'Nien, then do you know what? We could have a serious player on our hands here. And the deal is an interesting one, really, isn't it? Because we've got him on loan, even though he's only got 6 months of his contract left. So it begs the question, why haven't we just signed him permanently? But I think it probably works for us in the sense that if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, we're not obliged to take him up to the Premier League or have him in the Championship next season. But it does mean that if he does do well and he does overperform and have a really good season, then we could sign him in the summer. So that's probably positive in that sense, and we'd get him on a free then as well, wouldn't we? Because he's out of contract from Sunderland. But I really hope that he can kick on. I'm surprised we didn't see him against Preston. I had in my head that he was going to start, but McKenna always says when we sign a player, they need to be integrated in slowly. He's not had a lot of minutes for Sunderland this year, so trying to get that match sharpness might be a bit of a challenge. Hopefully we get him up to speed nice and quickly and he can come in and make an impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think with him as well, it's just providing a bit more, as you said, experience and stability in that middle, which we've been missing, especially on the road this season. Hopefully you can provide that. But yeah, it's kind of only been Batu coming through the door. Have you sort of any rumblings or sort of seen you talked about on your socials of a striker coming through the door? I mean, the talks of like Joel Pirro, I'm not that. It seems that it's sort of gone, but I'm not that excited by that move. And then Surridge as well as a few others names as well. But it seems like someone may come through the door potentially if it was to be one of those two, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we seem to be linked with every striker in the world at the minute, don't we? As we continue to try and search for a number 9. I mean, what I talk about on my YouTube, I only really talk about what's actually been reported by other people and just give my thoughts on it because
Yeah,
I haven't got a clue and I wouldn't want to put false information out there. So I mean, my overriding thoughts are that if I had a pick of all the people that we've been linked to, it would be William Osula from Newcastle. You know, very good on both feet, very skillful, tall, physical. You know, he's exactly the striker that we need. But I like a lot of the players we've been linked to. I know there was talk last week of Will Lancashire, the young Tottenham striker, on loan at Oxford. Whether that happens or not, I don't know because, of course, he's on loan at Oxford, and that would have to be cut short some way somehow. I like the idea of him, but one name that hasn't been out there that is just me throwing it out there now is Jefferson from Preston. Yesterday, I thought he
he was
had a really
fantastic.
terrific game, and you know, I think he's contracted to Bournemouth, if I'm correct. I think he's on loan at Preston from Bournemouth. I could be wrong there, but he looked very much like a Kieran McKenna-esque striker. So there's definitely people out there. I I do wonder how far down the line the club are with a striker because I think it's obvious that we need one. That's what we lacked yesterday against Preston, and I just think we're so close to the end of the window now that they've got to be far down the line with someone. It just depends on who. But then the other part of me thinks that if we were going to get whoever our first target was, then he would have probably already been through the door. So is whoever we end up with going to be third, fourth choice? So it's interesting, but there's definitely a few names out there that we could go and get. But if I had to pick one, it would be William Osula, although I don't necessarily think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be if we do get anyone, it's obviously going to be very very last minute, which isn't really the way McKenna likes to operate. We haven't really seen it for 3 years, so it would be surprising if anyone does, but we shall see. But as I said, though, we're getting to the squad rankings of players who have been wearing a Town shirt this season. We'll start with the goalkeepers. As I said, no offense to David Button, but hasn't really sort of done much between the sticks this season for Town. So we'll sort of look at the main two. Obviously, we did see. We'll start with Alex Palmer. He did start the majority of the beginning of the season until his injury came along and featured in the cup game against Blackpool.
Yeah.
Recently, it's not. I guess maybe it's hard to give him a specific rating, perhaps, but just he seems to now. It's similar with many seasons, isn't it, where one keeper gets injured, another one comes along, and it's just been unfortunate for him that Walton's been fantastic, really, for the most part, between the sticks for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's the curse of the Ipswich Town goalkeepers, we can say, isn't it? It seems like no goalkeeper comes to Ipswich Town and stays fit for a prolonged amount of time. I think he's a fairly solid goalkeeper. I don't think he's necessarily too different to Walton. I think they're very similar goalkeepers. Maybe Palmer edges it in the sense of playing out from the back probably a little bit better. But I don't think you can look past the fact that we've kept so many more clean sheets with Christian Walton. And whilst I can't pinpoint the reason why that is or why Walton is better than Palmer, that is a stat that I can't overlook. So of the two, I would prefer Walton, but I'm pretty happy with Palmer as a backup keeper as well. And I'd be very comfortable if Walton, touch wood, that he doesn't. But if he was to get injured, then I'd be quite happy with Alex Palmer to come in as his replacement. But I don't know. Do you want me to give him a grade? Do you want?
We can potentially. I think maybe some more players who have had more of an impact this season. Despite, so I think with Palmer, it's a bit up in the air just considering lack of performance. So we can look at Walton. Though I think one of the things we've struggled with, especially at the start of the season, was clean sheets. And whilst it's not been every single game, I think there's been a bit more consistency of the defence kind of finding their feet. But him also being so assured in goal, like Walton, I think signed a new contract this week, and was in the League One team, really important. Then kind of took a back seat as well. Hagley doing so well in the Championship, and then not really featuring at all much last year, apart from that one win at home against Chelsea. So he's obviously he's been around the club for a long time now, and I think it's great to see him sort of get his flowers from fans. He's one of those OGs, really. He kind of is still part of McKenna's setup, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and it's interesting. Christian and Wes Burns now, and Cameron Humphreys, because he's still technically on our books. So I think are the only ones that were here now before Kieran McKenna. I could be wrong on that, but Christian Walton has been a terrific servant to Ipswich Town, and I heard him post match yesterday saying about the fact that there has been times where he thought his Town career is over, but he's always stuck around and he's always fought for his place in the team, and he's always been ready whenever we needed him to come in. This season, particularly, I think most people have probably been pleasantly surprised. But it's one of those ones where I'm pleasantly surprised, but I don't know why I'm surprised, if you know what I mean, because he's always been so reliable. But I don't know. I just didn't expect him to be as good as he's been when we've called upon him this year. He commands his box really well. His playing out from the back has improved. It's not great, but it has definitely improved from where it was at. And as a shot stopper, you'll be hard placed to find one better in the Championship, I think. He's one that if we were to go up this season, that I'd quite happily take to the Premier League and give him a proper run because, I'm not trying to speak ill of any player for the sake of it, but Aro Muric, obviously, in the start to his town career was very much all over the place with a comedy of errors here and there. And I don't think that Walton has ever put us in that position. I don't think he's. I mean, there's been times where there's been goals that we've conceded, and of course, like any goalkeeper, you'd say, "Oh, I think Christian Walton could do better." Obviously, there was this season at Leicester where he got lobbed sort of in his own half, but he's never been one that lets his head drop, and then he doesn't. If he makes a mistake, it doesn't then turn into 3 or 4 mistakes. He's very level-headed. I think, as I've mentioned about leadership, I just think the fact that he's been here for a long time and he's really settled that defence. I think Christian Walton deserves an enormous amount of credit this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's very much deserving of that starting spot now, and unless an injury comes through, I can't really see him losing it. But yeah, getting into the defence now here, Harvey. There's a few to them. We'll sort of go through fullbacks and stuff. We've got a lot to get through, but we'll sort of try and do our best in depth from all of them. But we'll start on some fullbacks who obviously have contributed quite a lot of the season. We'll start with the main one really is Leif Davis. He's still one of the most consistent players in the town shirt on his day, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And look, his numbers don't necessarily reflect that as much as they did this time 2 years ago. He hasn't got as many assists as he did have, but I think that's because he's got Jadon Philogene and Jack Clark playing in front of him that score goals themselves. They don't need him to chip in with the goals or the assists because they're quite happy to carry the ball and find the top corner without his help. But he's so instrumental in the build-up, that switch of play, from the right-hand side. He always seems to be able to find that space down the left and just absolutely fly into it. He's not lacked any pace. It's nice to see him as confident as he is because, he spoke a lot last season in the Premier League about losing a lot of confidence. So it's nice to see him smiling again and seemingly enjoying his football. But yeah, I mean, as a left-back in Ipswich Town history, I mean, he's right up there, isn't he? Obviously there's been some terrific left-backs at Ipswich Town, but certainly Davis, having been here for as long as he has and has been as consistent as he has been in all of that time, he's a player that will be remembered by Ipswich Town fans for a long, long time. And I still think he's got a massive contribution for the rest of this season to give as well, and maybe even beyond that.
And then on that right side as well, as a new signing this year, took a few games to find his feet, but a sort of a nailed-on starter in the defence is Darnell Furlong. Adam from the Tractor Noise team he said to me it's his signing of the season, and I don't think it's too out there, perhaps. But what's your thoughts on Furlong's time in the town shirt so far?
I think he's been superb. I mean, it's always hard when an Ipswich Town fullback comes in because they're instantly compared to Leif Davis, and because Davis is so attacking, it's hard when you're a bit more of a conservative fullback, as Darnell Furlong is, to get the credit or at least be noticed in the same way that Davis is. But as a defensive right back, Darnell Furlong is so solid. I mean, there's not a lot that goes past him, and he loves to get into a bit of confrontation, doesn't he? I think he had that stuff I think it was him that was involved with Callum O'Hare at Sheffield. He had the other famous battle with Ephron Mason-Clark away at Coventry. He doesn't seem scared to get into a bit of a battle with an opposition winger, and that's always good to see from a defender. Probably lacks a little bit going forward in terms of what we've seen from Ipswich Town right-backs in the last couple of seasons. Harry Clark liked to get forward a bit, didn't he? Jano Donasian had that partnership with Wes Burns. But that is something that is definitely growing and getting better. Certainly in recent weeks, I've noticed Furlong overlapping a bit more and getting himself into the box. But I don't think that's ever going to be Furlong's strong point. I don't think he's necessarily needed to be an attacking right back, but he does his job very well for what he's needed for. He defends superbly, and yeah, he's just very defensively sound, I think.
Sort of lump these next two together. It's obviously sort of been the sub fullbacks throughout the season. It's Ashley Young and Ben Johnson, wherever you want to start with. One a bit more than the other, despite his age, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Johnson is a really funny one, and I'm glad you asked about him because he is probably the surprise story of the season in the sense that he just hasn't played. And I mean, he played a lot for us in the Premier League last year and was okay, no worse than anybody else. And this season, I thought he'd really kick on at Championship level, but for whatever reason, McKenna's just just not fancied him. And I mean, although Furlong's been good, when we signed Furlong, I was a little bit surprised about it because I thought, well, we've got Ben Johnson and we've already signed Ashley Young. I was a bit, well, where's that come from? And what I'm even more surprised about is, given his lack of minutes, that Ben Johnson is still looking like he's going to be here come the end of January. I was certain that he would move on this window, but I don't know whether it's the fact that he's on too high a wage for anybody else to consider. But he's a really odd one because I think he's a good player. I'm quite happy if I saw on the team sheet that, Ben Johnson would play. I was quite happy when I see him come on against Preston. I thought that's nice to see him. And yeah, it's just surprising that he hasn't had any minutes, but there's obviously a reason why. I just don't know what that is. I don't know if McKenna just fancies Furlong over him. And as for Ashley Young, I don't know, I'm a bit undecided because, he's good probably to have around the dressing room as a serial winner in his career, but he's probably on quite a lot of money, I would imagine. And he's probably not going to light it up for Ipswich Town. I mean, he's injured now, so whether we even see him in a Town shirt again, I don't know. I know his son's at the club, but it's a bit bizarre. I've quite liked it from a novelty perspective of seeing a former England international play for Ipswich Town. That's nice to see, but I don't know that it's given us a massive benefit. I don't know that Ashley's massively improved us. Maybe there's more that he does on the training ground that I don't see. But yeah, certainly from a playing perspective, I've not thought to myself, well, what a good job it is we've signed Ashley Young. And that seems really harsh. But yeah, I don't really know where I am with him.
I think with him, I think for the most part, he's obviously, I think he started the opener against Birmingham as well, I think. But for the most part, he's kind of just, I think he has been brought in, as you said, to be that presence behind the scenes a lot more and a lot of experience. It can only be beneficial. I think, he probably as well would have liked to have done more on the pitch this year as well, but time may be slightly catching up with him now. I don't know if he did sort of allude this maybe his last season as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he said that for a couple of seasons. So I do wonder if this year will be the one where he does actually sort of hang up the boots at the end of it. He's getting more and more involved with Sky now, isn't he? So we'll sort of see what happens there.
Yeah, so look at the centre-backs now. As I said, I've only got sort of three listed down. They are sort of the main three. Also, a few have made a few cameos throughout the season. But we'll start with the captain, Dara O'Shea. Obviously, as you said, he's one of the guys who was here last season, didn't obviously have many great results in the Township last year, and was given the armband after Sam Morsey's departure in the summer, which, some people maybe thought wasn't maybe the correct choice, but I think as the season's gone on, that he's developed as a leader. I think defensively he's improved a lot as well and found his feet in a Town shirt. What's your thoughts on O'Shea's season with the armband and leading this squad in the Championship?
I think that video just before kickoff in the Norwich game where he says, us and our people, I think that's done him a lot of favours. I think that was a very strategically placed camera that has massively helped our captain. I think people are a lot more fond of him since then. I think he's a good leader. It's hard to say that he's a better leader than Sam Morsey because Sam Morsey was such a good one, and they're obviously very different types of leaders. He's definitely improved playing wise this season, and the old thing is lead by example, isn't it? Is if you play well, then hopefully those around you will see the standard that you're playing at and try to match that. He's a good centre back. I think he wins a lot in the air, quicker than probably most people give him credit for. Throws himself in front of a ball, very brave. I think there's more to come from him. But what I will say is he is younger than I thought he was. I think am I right in thinking he's only 26? I think.
Yeah. So let's see. This is behind the scenes search, right? 26, birthday in March, so 27 shortly.
Yeah, because I had it in my head for some reason that he was sort of late 20s and sort of early 30s, and I thought, well, there's not much scope for him to develop, but I think there's so much scope for him to get even better, and I think this season has definitely been one that he'll look back on and see as a big step forward. Certainly, obviously taking the armband is a big thing in itself, but also I think his performances this year are far better than they were in the Premier League last year, and it's strange, even last year I didn't think he was bad by any means, although we conceded a lot of goals. It was hard to pinpoint any of our defenders last year that were particularly bad or out of form, because individually I thought they were all good. But as a unit, for whatever reason, they just didn't work in the Premier League, and they're certainly working a lot better now in the Championship.
Yeah, I think, obviously being a league below does help, but, it's also confidence is a massive thing. And that assurity and, the belief that the manager's put in him this year, it's only improved him, really, hasn't it? I've been a big fan of him this season. Look at the final two centre-backs. We'll start with Jacob Greaves. Obviously, he was that sort of, on paper, a dream pairing for, I think, for Championship standards, these two. But, the arrival of Kipray's kind of usurped him slightly. Some good performances in there. I think Coventry away, albeit it was at left back, looks really good for Greaves. But yeah, it's hard for him. He seems to have found it hard to sort of get that nail on start to roll next to Dara Shea, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he's been unfortunate in the sense that Kipray's been as good as he has. And I know we'll talk about Kipray in a minute, but Greaves is finding it hard to get in the team over what is becoming an increasingly strong centre-back partnership. And he had a look in, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago at left-back. Well, I think that was the Sheffield United game that he played left-back again as well, wasn't it? And he certainly wasn't as impressive at left-back then as he was against Coventry. But that doesn't mean that it's not a position that I'd like to see him tried in again, because he's a very solid defender and deceptively good at going forward as well. We've seen him getting in the box, a couple of fake shots. He's got a bit of skill to him as Jacob Greaves, and he's obviously a player with massive potential, because that's why we paid so much money for him last summer. And when you look at that game against Liverpool, the first one of the Premier League, the first half of that game, I thought to myself, like, what a centre-back we've got. Like, he's unbelievable. And then he got his injury, and he's never really been the same player since his injury. But, you know, this season, as you say, he's just been struggling to get in the team. And I think if he had a full season next to Dara O'Shea and that partnership developed for a full season, then I'd be quite confident that, you know, that could be a centre-back partnership that stays together for a long time at Ipswich Town. But I don't know. I think he needs to find minutes in the team. He's got to find a way to get in the team ahead of Kipray. Otherwise, I think that his Town career might quickly get away from him, because there's certainly a player in there, and we've seen glimpses of Jacob Greaves being amazing, but we've also seen moments where perhaps he hasn't been so. And look, I want him to do well. He's got everything that a centre-back needs. He's tall, he's quick, not scared to get into a big tackle, but it just hasn't been his season, I don't think. And I think he'd be quite quick to admit that as well.
Yeah, a big reason for that, as you said, is Cedric Kipray's brilliance. Really, obviously scored the opener in the derby, and he's scored a few goals here and there. As you said, I think like Greaves good at going forward and looks very defensively assured on his feet and sticking or tackling. He's been great, hasn't he, Kipray? Obviously, don't fall in love with a lone player, but hopefully this romance can continue.
Yeah, although after that miss against Preston in like the last 30 seconds, when the ball went straight to his head and he hit it at the goalkeeper, but we'll forgive him for that, because as you say, he's been brilliant this season. I mean, the goal against Norwich, for a centre-back to hit a ball like that is incredible. I think he said afterwards, to be fair, that he grew up playing as a striker, and his touch for a centre-back is unbelievable. The way he can bring a ball down and just control it seamlessly, it's like nothing I've seen before. And I think against Preston, that was probably the one game where I've seen him struggle this year, up against Jefferson. Jefferson gave him a really good battle, but I'd say that he probably even edged that battle as well, even when he wasn't necessarily at his best. But I can't think of another game this season where he's been outdone by an opposition striker. You know, he's strong as an ox, isn't he? I don't think he's particularly quick, but his positioning makes up for that. He's always in the right place where he needs to be. And I just think him and O'Shea next to each other really complement each other really well. And Kipray at the minute, I mean, I know we'll talk about Matasiwa later, but for me, it's between Matasiwa and Kipray at the minute for player of the season so far, because I think Kipray's been that good. And it does seem like every time they announce the man of the match at Portman Road, they say Cedric Kipray. And I think to myself, again, Cedric Kipray again. But then I think to myself, well, who else? Because he has just been that good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, it's a testament to him as well, the fact that he came into a team where he wasn't going to be knowing he's going to be nail on starting next to Dara O'Shea this season, obviously with the expected partnership with Taylor Greaves and O'Shea. But he's done so well to just, you know, form and class is what gets you into that position. He's done so well to make it his own. Obviously, like I said, a goal against Norwich and isn't going to hurt your case anymore, is it? We'll take our first break now. When we come back, we'll, as we said, continue through this sort of squad review. I think it's turned into rather than ratings, but it's hard to be a bit harsh given a number or a letter, I shouldn't say, throughout the season. But yeah, we'll come back. We'll look at the midfield and attack. We'll also give a little preview to Tuesday night's game against Portsmouth. So we'll see you guys in a sec. Welcome back to part 2 of Track Noise. Myself and Harvey Bell joining with Noise this week as we look sort of back on Town's squad this season and give a bit of review on each individual player. On the midfield now, Harvey, I'm sort of going through how they're listed on the site's sort of position here. So some may see him more as an attacker, but he's listed as a midfielder. So that's what I'm going to mention him as. And that's Wes Burns. Obviously, not much to go from this season in terms of a sort of a whole sort of recap, but he's come back in at the last stage of the year and as you said, for a few players, taken like a duck to water of how well he's sort of come back into the squad, and a welcome return, very much so for Wes Burns, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, massively. And it's a massive testament to both him and the medical staff at Ipswich Town, the fact that £750,000 Wes Burns has come back into the team after nearly a year out and has played better than £20 million Sindre Valiageli and £12 million Casey McAteer. You know, he's been superb, and he just doesn't look like he's lost any pace at all. And he got the goal at Coventry, which was, you know, really nice, a fantastic moment for everyone. And I'm just looking forward to when he next scores at Portman Road, because I know that everybody's going to enjoy that particularly as well. So look, I'm really pleased for Wes Burns. He's a player that everybody loves, just given what he's done over the last few years at Town. And I don't think you'll find an Ipswich Town fan at the moment that doesn't love him.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll sort of get through to the sort of middle of the park here. We'll start with Jack Taylor as well. Maybe we can sort of line and Q stay this as well, because I said there's sort of kind of been a carousel between the pair this season as to who's going to occupy that pivot role next to Matasiwa. I think looking at Kayuste as well first, I mean, obviously, I think there's a bit more expectation of him. He started this weekend against Preston. We're so glad to have him back, and we're very much happy to have him back this season, but it's maybe not as been as a great ride this season as it was in the Premier League last year, despite the fact we weren't winning many games. He was top tier, wasn't he? And really shone.
Yeah, he was. And I very much agree that when we signed him in the summer, I thought, well, this guy is going to rip up the Championship. And
Absolutely.
it just hasn't worked out that way for whatever reason. I don't know why, but he hasn't got the goal contributions that he would have liked. And he has so much skill. I think I'm quite comfortable in saying that Jens Kajus is the most skillful midfielder in the Championship. But that doesn't mean the best midfielder, because the best midfielder for me is somebody that wins the ball back, is somebody that contributes to goals and contributes to build up. And Jens Kajus does all of those things in flashes, but I need to see more consistency from Jens, I think, because he's got everything that you need to be a good midfielder and more. You know, we've seen so much talent from him, but we just haven't seen it often enough. You know, he'll play really well for 10 minutes and then you won't see him for the next 50. And then he'll do a nice turn and everyone will be excited, but then you won't see him for another 20 minutes. And it's like, you know, I'm not knocking him for the sake of knocking him. I love Jens Kajus and I love the idea of what Jens Kajus can do, but I just want to see it on a more regular basis.
Yeah. The reason we haven't seen much from him really is because Jack Taylor's kind of kept him out of the spot. Obviously, Dan Neil's come in. Both could maybe see a few less minutes at the moment, but for the most part of the season, Jack Taylor's kind of been one occupying the role next to Matasiwa. We kind of say of Jack Taylor, I don't know what your opinion of him. Obviously, he's been at the club for a long time now as well, but you know, he's not necessarily a 6, he's not really a 10, but we don't really play with an 8. So he's always really, during his time at Town, struggled to sort of know where his position is, where maybe he's in a formation where his position isn't really available to him. But he's had a good season this year, I think. Really, not much expected from him, but he's put in some good performances and been what you could argue a key member of McKenna's squad for the most part.
Yeah, no, I very much agree. And I think Jack Taylor is always going to be one of those players that is tremendously useful to have around the group. Whether he's going to be your best player is another question. But for me, he's consistent across any level. And what I mean by that is I think you could take a Jack Taylor in League One, Championship and the Premier League. And I think regardless of what league you're playing in, I think he'd give you a 7 out of 10. And I don't think he'd go lower than that. I also don't think he'd go higher than that. So I think he's very good to have as an option. And because Jens Kajus hasn't kicked on the way that he has this season, it's opened the door for Jack Taylor to come in and do well. And because Matasiwa's done so well, that's elevated Jack Taylor's game as well to heights that we probably haven't seen from Jack Taylor yet. And he has played really, really well. But I do wonder now how many minutes he'll get with Dan Neil coming into the side. If McKenna was completely satisfied with Jack Taylor and Jens Kajus, then I wonder if we would have gone and got Dan Neil. Probably not, is my thinking. So McKenna obviously feels like there is an upgrade available in that position. And it looks like Dan Neil is going to be that man. But I don't want to discredit the work that Jack Taylor's done this year, because it would have been very easy for him to go in the summer when a lot of our other players did. And, do you know, I think probably before October, I'd earmarked Jack Taylor as one that could potentially be on his way out in January. And, he then played that game against West Brom, did superbly well, and we haven't looked back since. So Jack Taylor is the man that keeps on living and keeps on impressing. And, every time that you think he may be done or his town career might be fizzling out, he pops back up. And I expect that he'll do that again at some point.
Yeah, it's no surprise, is it, this season that a lot of players we've sort of earmarked in this who have had maybe not, been the best player, but definitely had some good contributions. The small one return from West Burns and Walton and Taylor and Davis. There's guys that they've been there and done it all, haven't they? And they know McKenna's system, and you're not going to be maybe the main guy, but they know how to sort of play in a town show. And he's very much, I think it's probably been his best season so far for the club.
I agree massively. Yeah. Without a doubt, it's been Taylor's best season. I know he's had better moments in the sense, he scored some rockets in League One, didn't he? Some 30, 25-yard screamers, things like that. He obviously had the header against Wolves in the Premier League last season. And whilst he's yet to have a moment like that this season, just the consistency of his play and his regularity and being in the team has definitely made it probably his most impressive season for Town so far.
Absolutely. Speaking of consistent, let's get to him now, because we talk about him a lot, is Azamata Siwa. My word. Some people call him the Suffolk Kante this season, and struggled in the first couple of games. I think Birmingham was a bit of a learning curve for most players, especially new signings in a new country and stuff. His stats this season, interceptions and tackles, I think is dominating that in the league in the middle of the park. And I think if we go up this season, he looks ready-made, hopefully, to be a key player for us for many years to come.
Without a doubt. I mean, he reads the game so well, doesn't he? I mean, he seems to know what's going to happen about 4 plays before it actually happens. And it was always going to be hard for the midfielder that came in to replace Sam Morsey. And Matasiwa has just done that, and we've never really looked back. And, I just think that in terms of a player that has come over from the French leagues and had the challenge of adapting to a really fast-paced championship, he's done terrifically well, because there's been so many players that we signed in the summer that we've given the excuse of, it's really difficult for them coming into this team. It's a completely different division. And not once have I felt like I've had to say that about Azor Matasiwa. I mean, maybe the game against Birmingham right at the start of the season, which you allude to, that he didn't have his best game. But since then, he's just been terrific. And he very much fits the category of a player that if Azor Matasiwa plays well, Ipswich Town plays well. And similar to our former captain, Sam Morsey, he loves a yellow card, doesn't he? I mean, he's walking the tightrope at the minute. I think he's one away from suspension. And he is one of those players that if he gets suspended and doesn't play in a game, you do then fear about the next game, because you think, how are we going to cope without him? And I think that's probably the biggest testament that you can give to a player when you can't imagine a side without him. And I can't imagine Kieran McKenna's 25-26 championship team without Azor Matasiwa in it.
No, absolutely. I don't think the championship team this season can imagine the team without Azor Matasiwa.
I agree.
I mean, also as well, I think the only loss, correct me if I'm wrong, the only loss at home this season, Charlton, he didn't play in that game as well.
Yeah, that's very true. Those 3 goals that happened in the space of 12 minutes against Charlton, they wouldn't have happened with Matasiwa in the team. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final sort of midfielder player we have as well sort of came in, started in that pivot, then the fans kind of want him to come to the 10 and, caught headlines before he even kicked a ball. And it's obviously Marcelino Nunes, and injured at the moment, unfortunately, which Norwich fans did say was going to happen. Hopefully it's a short one. Looks like it's going to be. But you can tell when he's not in the squad, like Matasiwa, it's such a key loss. But he's only grown and grown throughout the season. I think he's been a fantastic addition.
Yeah.
Banter aside, he's been fantastic, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And I'm reluctant to say anything like just build the statue now, because if he was to pull a similar stunt somewhat in the future, I feel that might be clipped and spread around Twitter. But yeah, Marcelino Nunes has been terrific, and he's got so much flair about him. I'm not really surprised to see him in the number 10 position, really, because as much as we signed him as a midfield, as a sort of deeper midfielder player, he's clearly got the qualities to play in that number 10. And in terms of creativity, I can't think of many Town players that I've seen that are as creative as Nunes, and I don't want to over-egg the pudding in that sense of how good he's been. But his passing is an absolute joke at times. Like, the way he spreads that ball across the pitch it is unbelievable. And I worry a little bit about his physicality, because he's not He's not massively built, and he probably could be knocked off the ball quite easily, but he seems to get things done quickly. He's got a bit of pace about him. He doesn't hang around, and he seems to be he seems to be a couple of passes in front of everybody else. So I'm not too worried at the moment, but that is one area of his game that I think would probably need improvement if we were to go up and if he was to come with us. But as he's been so far, I've got absolutely no complaints, because some of the assists that he's got, I mean, he got the 2 free kick goals at QPR as well. He's just been terrific. And I know since those 2 QPR free kicks that he got and the scored, his free kicks haven't been amazing, but it's clear to see the sort of power that he gets in those free kicks and the technique that he has as well. So hopefully, he can find a bit more consistency when getting those free kicks. But yeah, for my money, he's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. I think on those free kicks as well, like you mentioned, it's like there's a bit of an expectation of him, which you don't really have from many players when he's on that part of the ball. So it's a great aspect from having this game as well. But looking at the attackers now, there's a few mentioned here, so we'll try and do our best sort of ball us through him as we come on the hour mark of the show here. But I'll mention he's in the squad currently. Obviously, at time recording, I would not be surprised if he leaves in the town shirt. Wasn't on the bench this weekend, didn't start. Sam Schmodix looks to be off, whether it's Derby, Wrexham, we're not entirely sure yet. Injuries have kind of plagued him a bit, and he came in with a big expectation considering how well he did for Blackburn, but it's not really worked out, and obviously injuries have been a factor to that. But yeah, fortunately, he seems to be gone as a town player now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I would be very surprised, to be honest, if he's here come the end of the window. I just don't think it's worked out at Town, and I don't know what the reported fee is for wherever he's going to go. But if we could get somewhere like £5 or £6 million and recoup much of our fee, then I think that'd be very good business.
Yeah, agreed. Looking at the wingers as well, obviously we'll get into the strikers shortly. We touched upon him at the start of the show anyway. As you said there, Wes Burns has kept 2 players out of that right side after his return recently. One of those is Casey McAteer. We've had a lot to say on the show this year as well, but he seems to kind of fall into the wayside a bit now, especially after Burns' return.
Yeah, he has. And there's definitely a player in there, because we saw it at Leicester. I think he scored against us at Portman Road for Leicester.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say about Casey is that I'm not the first guy to say that it hasn't worked out for him here and that he hasn't been great for Ipswich. I don't think that's any secret. But the £12 million that often gets branded around with him isn't really on him. That's on Ashton and the deal with Leicester. What he needs to focus on is just playing football, and it's not his fault that he cost £12 million. And I think McKenna raised a very good point that at 24 years old, Wes Burns was playing right back for Fleetwood, and look at the town career that he's had. Casey McAteer is only 24 himself, and yes, £12 million is a lot to spend on a player. Yes, you expect more from a player that costs £12 million, but I do hope that Casey can have a good town career, and I do hope that he can turn around what has been a slow start to his town career, whichever way you look at it. But I like to think there's a player in there. I don't know how he progress. I don't know if he goes out on loan. I don't know if maybe we just bite the bullet in the summer and try and recoup some of our money. But yeah, I just like to think that there's a player there with Casey McAteer that can have an impact at Town, whether I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, there have been flashes, haven't there? I mean, statistically, don't back them up, but yeah, I agree. Like the player who came in, I was very excited, but it's not really sort of shone through yet. And I think there's been a few more here, but Egley's similar as well. The caveat of he's young and it's a new country and all that sort of stuff, but maybe you could start to not use that as less so of an excuse at the moment. But he didn't start on the weekend again. But just thoughts on him? It's been a big price tag, and he looks like he's a good player in there, considering his age and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I love him. I know that he's come under a lot of stick because he costs so much, but I really like him a lot. I think he's a really good size for an attacker. He's obviously scored a couple of goals, and he's clearly got a very good finish on him. Whether I think he's a winger or not is a different question. I think he's probably better suited to the number 10 position. He's so one-footed, that's why he has to cut back all the time before getting a cross in. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to come from him, and I like him a lot. He doesn't get knocked off the ball easily. He clearly likes a shot. He's got the vision for it, and it has been a bit slow, but as with anything, as you say, 19, moving from a different country, I think it was always going to take time for him to adapt, more so than anybody else that we've spoken about. So I'm not ruling him out yet. £20 million in a similar vein to what you said about Casey McAteer is a lot of money to spend on a player, but that price tag isn't on him. That was negotiated between the clubs. He doesn't have to feel the pressure of living up to that. I just want Agueli to focus on being the very best that he can be, and I think that there's a real player there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen flashes, and I agree. I think that 10 role could be his, because he won't have to then rely upon sort of holding the ball back and sort of awkwardly crossing on his left when he maybe could be doing it on his right. Yeah, hopefully we can see more from him to come. We'll get to the strikers now before we finish on the left side. We talked about Hurst, Azon, and Akpom at the top of the show here, so we can sort of get through these three quite quickly. Just thoughts on all three, really, as the season gone on, just moments individually and the impact they've had.
Yeah, I mean, they've all had flashes in the pan. George Hurst has got 5 goals this season. Azon's obviously had a couple. He scored at Swansea, didn't he? Akpom got that one against Oxford on New Year's Day. All three of them have quality, just quality that hasn't necessarily shown itself enough over the course of this season. Hurst is lacking confidence. Akpom's lacking minutes, and Azon is probably just edging it out of the three at the moment. I think is probably my preferred choice of the three, but there's so much more to come from all three of them. Whether we see it from Akpom and Azon, I don't know, because obviously they're only on loan and could go back at the end of the season. So whether we ever see their full potential in an Ipswich Town shirt, I don't know. First, I really hope we do. He needs confidence, as we said at the top of the show. But yeah, I mean, it's obvious that we need a new striker at the minute to challenge those three. But that's not discrediting the work that those three have done this season, because it hasn't been great. But that there is definitely moments where you can say that all three of them have done well.
Absolutely. And then look at the left side. It's sort of been the lack of goals on that. The strikers has sort of made up for it with how well these two have done on the left. We'll start with Jaden Philogene. Obviously, he came in January last year, and it's in the Premier League when we were struggling. It's difficult to really find your feet, but home, especially this season, obviously he's got an unfortunate injury right now, but he's been fantastic. That goal against Norwich, to name a few, it's been really key to where we are right now, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, I feel like this has probably been said before, but he's having a goal of the season competition against himself. I mean, he scores the same goal every week, cutting in and hitting it across the goalkeeper into the top corner. And I honestly don't know how he does it, because you'd think the opposition would be wiser to it at the minute. And his defensive work has improved as well. He always tracks back, and overall he's become a really integral part of Kieran McKenna's side. And that I wonder how many he'll get at the end of the season. I wonder if he'll come straight back into the team once he's back from injury, because Jack Clark's been doing so well in his absence. But look, make no mistake about it, Jaden Philogene is a very good player for Ipswich Town at the moment, and one that I feel will only get better. And he didn't have obviously the best start to his Town career when we was in the Premier League last season, but I think we all knew that coming down to the Championship that he would have this sort of season, and yeah, he's living up to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, apart from this injury right now, he's probably one of our top players this season. I think hopefully when he comes back, he can crack on. But the reason, obviously, you said, if he does come back, where he's going to start, I kind of do expect him to start. Obviously, Clark's most of his goals come off the bench for the season. Obviously, he started a fair few recently with Philogene's injury. But Jack Clark, I think he's 12 league goals this season. Obviously, a fair few penalties in there that could have obviously bolstered stats up. But he's another one, isn't he? I think it was difficult last season with a improved league, new team and stuff. But he's shown with Sunderland. He scored at Portman Road a few seasons ago for Sunderland. He knows how to get a goal there, and he's obviously found a few this season. Like many from last year, he's sort of improved a lot this year, isn't he? He looks a really key member of the team now.
Yeah, he has. And what I'll say about Jack Clark is he's absolutely relentless in trying to drive us forward, in the sense that he'll just pick up a ball and keep running in such a way that nobody else in our team does. He's by far, I would say, our most positive player, always looking forward. If I could have one criticism for the team overall, I think we are a little bit negative at times. I think we pass back a lot. But Jack Clark, I don't think he does pass back. He's always attack-minded, carries himself into the box. And, I mean, he's got 12 goals this season. He's our top goal scorer, and he's very much in the race to win the Golden Boot as well. And as you say, 4 of those are penalties. He's very clinical from the spot. But he draws fouls. He then can convert the fouls that turn into penalties. He scores those. He can score from open play. He's got just about everything that you could want in a winger. And I know you know that Jaden Philogene has been good this season. He scored, and I've given him his praise, but I would be keeping Jack Clark in the team even when Jaden Philogene comes back, because Jack Clark is just that integral to Ipswich Town at the minute, I think. And, I don't think that we would have got the equaliser without him against Preston. There's been occasions this season where I don't think without his energy at the end of games, especially, that we would have got back into some of the games that we got back into, because his fitness is that good. His drive to want to win and his drive to score goals is unmatched. And yeah, he's just been brilliant.
Yeah, do you not maybe think from argument's sake there could be coming off the bench that energy is even more heightened, because some people are tired. He's able to just come on and be like a bit of a rocket perhaps after Philogene's gone off.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, that is the stat, isn't it? That he has scored from the bench quite a lot, probably more so than anybody else in the Championship. I don't know. I mean, he could have an impact from a bench, but I just think when you've got a player that good playing for 90 minutes, it's just hard, isn't it? In the sense that Jaden Philogene and Jack Clark both play on the left, because we could do with one of them being naturally right-sided or a striker or something or other. It's just unfortunate that our two most prolific players happen to play in the same position, and that brings up a lot of challenges. But maybe I should just be grateful that we've got both.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's double-edged sword, isn't it? It's so good to have those two players, because I think quality-wise it's the best left pairing in the league, like by a country mile.
Yeah.
But shame, as you said, Philogene can shoot on his left. Obviously, we saw it against Norwich, but it doesn't really come from the right that much. But it'd be a dream if they could. But yeah, that's sort of our review of the squad this season. We might have one in the end of the season come May with some backs on how the team's progressing. Hopefully, can sort of say their goal, some players promotion clinching goals and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, cheers to that, Harvey. Before we finish the show, we'll just look at as you said, tomorrow night we are playing Portsmouth. A game that was supposed to happen earlier in January, was abandoned due to a frozen pitch. But were you on your way to the South Coast for that game, like a few of our listeners were, and it was abandoned, or were you in Suffolk?
Well, fortunately, I wasn't, because it was my birthday that day, so I decided that I was going to spend the day with my family, and I'm glad I did, because I'd have been very annoyed.
Yeah, good call. I know Adam from the Track to Noise team. He was about half an hour from the ground, and then it was told to turn back. Unfortunately,
it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, didn't make a day of it, but fair play to us. Other people would have gone straight back as well. But Pompey, obviously, 3-0 win the weekend. We did play him earlier in the season with a 1-0 victory, a goal from Philogene. A player who obviously is there is Connor Chapman, who we won't see obviously line up against us for being on loan. He did get a goal and an assist on the weekend, and Dazelle got an assist for him on the weekend. So some Ipswich links for them, but this is the first of our 5 away games in all competitions. On paper, you think this may be the easiest one, but you obviously can't underestimate anyone in the Championship, and it will be a tough game. Obviously, with it being game in hand, sometimes you are welcome, but I think I would have much rather got this game out of the way a few weeks ago and have that 30 game on the board rather than having to claw back a lead behind Borough and all that lot. But it's going to be a tough game, isn't it, on the South Coast Tuesday night?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much in the same boat as you, in the sense that I really wish we had played this a few weeks ago, because Portsmouth have just massively kicked on in form, and that's going to make it difficult, because Fratton Park, regardless of where Portsmouth are in the division, is going to be a difficult place to go, just given the atmosphere there and given the ground that it is. And you never want to play teams that are down, struggling near the bottom away from home, especially. I mean, we're not quite there yet, but as we go into the later stages of the season, because they're fighting for their lives, and I don't think I can quite say that they're fighting for their lives yet, and they're certainly in a spell at the minute where it looks like they're going to pull themselves out of a relegation fight, but they are very much trying to prove themselves that they can stay in the Championship, and we're unfortunate in the sense that we're playing them at this time, because had we had played them a few weeks ago, they were out of form, we were very much in form, and now we're going back into it sort of on the flippity flip, in the sense that the Ipswich are obviously not in great form. We've lost to Sheffield United, drawn with Preston, and they're coming into the game with so much confidence. So, I mean, hopefully that means that they'll be a little bit complacent. I don't know, but are you ever complacent when you're playing this Ipswich Town team? It certainly seems not, with the way that teams have set up against us this year. But it's definitely frustrating that game was postponed, because this is not going to be an easy game now for Ipswich Town, if it ever was going to be.
No, definitely. Especially with all the other road games coming up, it sort of just heightens that sort of potential travel fatigue. But hopefully, I think given the amount we've got now in quick succession, it's kind of a bit of tunnel vision, sort of us against the world mentality, and hope the team can sort of crack on the road. But that's going to do it for today. So Harvey, thanks so much for joining us. Where can everyone find you on the internet, shall we say, and all that sort of stuff?
Well, thank you for having me. But yeah, my YouTube is just my name, Harvey Bell, and you'll find me on Instagram searching the same thing, and YouTube and anything. It's just my name.
Yeah.
Bell as if in ding dong, as I always say to people.
Absolutely, and do the same for us as well. That's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back on Wednesday. I think Adam and Rob are going to be on giving a recap of the Portsmouth game, but that's going to do it. If you want to head over to our socials, give us a like and a follow, and if you want to head over to YouTube and like and subscribe and comment below, it always helps out as we're just starting out the season. But Harvey, thanks so much for joining us. We'll probably have you on later in the season to hopefully recap the promotion clinching campaign as we go to the Premier League.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone for listening. Thank you again. We'll see you all next time.